All right, so just ahead of our 2019 pitch final, we're going to bring out to the stage some guests who have witnessed enough terrible pitches to last a lifetime. So this all-star panel is going to share the do's and don'ts for what makes to them a fantastic pitch, which will ultimately lead to them maybe parting with some of their cash. So on stage, please welcome from Cheddar, Alex Heath, Hummer Winblad's Ann Winblad. From Draper Associates, we have Tim Draper, and from 500 Startups, Christine Tsai.
All right. Thanks everyone for being here. We have three prominent investors here, all with respective differences in their funds and what they invest in. So I thought it'd be great to start by having each of you just explain a little bit about your respective firms and the areas you typically invest in. Anne, can we start with you?
I'm the co-founder of Hummer Winblad Venture Partners, and we've been around for 29 3/4 years, and we've done the same thing since day one. We invest in the first round of capital going into enterprise software companies. So we are a focused fund on enterprise software early stage.
Terrific. I'm Tim Draper, and I started Draper Associates, DFJ, and then something called the Draper University of Heroes. And the school is for extraordinary people who really want to start businesses, like maybe some of you. And we take you through a 5-week program. And I've been in the venture capital business for a long time, 33 years, and have had a lot of fun doing it. And whenever I come here, I look out at entrepreneurs and I feel like I need to honor them. So, honor you.
Christine?
Hi, I'm Christine Tsai, a co-founder and managing partner at 500. 500 is a global early stage venture firm. We've been around, kind of a baby compared to your firms, but we've been around for 9 years now, and our portfolio is quite global as well. We're about 49% outside of the US. We're investing primarily, I guess, stage-wise seed, although seed is pretty broad at this point and has moved either upstream or downstream, but we're usually an early check into a company, either through one of our funds or as part of our accelerator program, which is based in San Francisco.
All right, let's get into the specific areas that each of you invest in and what you're most excited about. I mean, starting with Anne, I know you're very focused on enterprise, B2B, a lot of companies in that space. It's a very hot space right now. We just had PagerDuty, Zoom go public. Seems like fantastic businesses, fantastic IPOs, you could say, are doing better than the consumer tech IPOs. Why is the enterprise space so hot right now, and what are you looking at specifically in enterprise?
Well, all the world's global enterprises are still very early in the process of what they're calling digital transformation, and that means they're really looking at all pieces of their software stack, from the software development pieces to the integration pieces to every kind of app, to enhance their competitive experience with the customer. So when we look at, as a futurist, we really are auditioning the future every day. So I'm an opportunist. So it's amazing how many enterprise opportunities come through our door in areas of the software stack we've never thought of before. One of the areas that we have a lot of excitement around is DevOps, our development operations, where actually how software is built is really undergoing amazing transformation since the days that I was a software developer. So that's just one of many. Almost everything that we see these days is touched by data and touched by machine learning or artificial intelligence, but we're not looking particularly at artificial intelligence companies, just that is tending to be a component of almost all companies we see.
Tim, obviously you're very into Bitcoin. We can see by the tie.
Yeah, I'm wearing the tie.
You've become known for that tie. Decentralization, blockchain, AI, those are areas you focus a lot on. What specific areas within those environments are you seeing a lot of activity right now?
Well, I think the world's changing. I think this is one of the greatest transformations that we've ever had in the history of society. We used to be tribal, and now we're going global. It started with the internet. We were all able to communicate across border, and that lowered the borders. Well, now we've got money that goes cross-border, and it's decentralized, so Bitcoin and all the things that come with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin also brought along with it the Bitcoin technologies, the smart contracts and the blockchain and open node, the ability to go off chain and come back. And now I'm seeing, we've just announced an investment in something called unstoppable domains, and you can get a domain that is not controlled by anyone and impossible to be controlled by anyone. So if you want to put up a domain and say free Tibet, you're free to do that. So I feel like this is the beginning of us becoming very much a global world, and customs borders are going to disappear. All sorts of things are going to happen, and I think governments are going to be more ethereal. They're going to be more virtual, and they'll compete to provide services for us. So I'm looking at a world that looks like that. So if you're entrepreneurs going after something, come talk to. I'm tim@draper.vc. I'm the only one who ever gives that. Well, maybe Ann will. My email address, and I read them all.
Okay. Christine, 500 Startups obviously you have over 2,000 companies in the portfolio. You guys invest across a wide range of sectors all over the world. So I guess maybe more with you from a macro sense, what are you seeing at the seed stage right now in terms of where are the best entrepreneurs, where are they gravitating towards, what sectors, where are you seeing the most activity?
I think from the perspective that we have, especially at the global level, I think it's pretty clear that where the best entrepreneurs are. They're definitely not all in Silicon Valley. They're not all in one market. It's pretty spread throughout the world. So the challenge is that talent existing kind of really universally. The access to capital and mentorship and resources, it's certainly not on par with Silicon Valley in many cases. So that's something that a lot of the entrepreneurs that we back, whether they stay in their home country or they come to Silicon Valley or come elsewhere, that's always been kind of the gap in many cases. So that's a lot of our mission, is to really find those entrepreneurs wherever they are. And in terms of the sectors, I think, as you said, we have invested in a lot of sectors, across SaaS or DevOps or some crypto. And I think there are certainly newer sectors that we probably wouldn't have invested in, maybe because they weren't really a thing 9 years ago. But things that are kind of in the deep tech space or doing a lot more in fintech, digital health, partly because the market is kind of going in that direction as well. But I think we also, I know me personally, I like looking at changes in demographics too. So you certainly see this in different markets like, say, Southeast Asia or Latin America, certainly in the MENA region where there are very large populations. Southeast Asia is more than 500 million people. The population is, a majority of that population is under 30, so it's very young. There's a lot of kind of infrastructure type of things that I think here in North America we're accustomed to, are very developed, maybe from a venture perspective don't seem that kind of flashy or interesting, but in other markets they're still very much developing, and there's a lot of room for innovation there. So that's where we certainly like looking at in terms of what are the changes in just people and demographics in these different markets, and even here, and what are the types of problems they're facing. You certainly think about this, say, from the perspective of women and buying power and their professional careers, what are solutions that help their problems that they're facing.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up access to capital. Ann and Tim, how are you guys thinking about the diversity, or definitely lack thereof, in access to capital, where it's spread, where you put money? Are you both intentionally trying to invest in more geographies? Are you trying to spread money, or is it a focus thing? It's just you only have so much time, you can only invest in so many companies. How do you think about that?
We've always invested across North America, which includes Canada. We don't initiate investments outside the US in companies that are incorporated outside of North America. But a typical startup these days is pretty distributed. A good example is a recent exit of ours of a company that was started 12 years ago. Salesforce bought it last year for $6.7 billion, called MuleSoft. Startup is 5 people in 4 countries. The visionary founders in Malta. They incorporate in the United States. They end up having 1,500 employees by the time they go public and get acquired. 400 of them are in Buenos Aires, focused around 2 of those original founders. So the distributed company is real. We've always invested outside of Silicon Valley. We have companies in Canada, Minneapolis, DC, Boston, New York, Los Angeles. I will say that the further we go from our headquarters in San Francisco, the higher the bar is for the company we invest in, because we can't drive to the leadership. We can't help in real time on some of the problems. So we do hold distance. Distance equals higher bar, but we do fund across all of North America.
Tim, and in the crypto world, it's even more distributed, right? It's
well, I built the Draper Venture Network, and so that's a network of venture funds around the world. And we actually did, we tried to work out a deal with Ilya Trinch. It's hard for me to pronounce her name, but she runs something called Mars here. And 20 years ago, we were here trying to set up something with her. And for some reason, she's fantastic, and for some reason it didn't work. But we're hoping to set up another office here. We have 24 offices around the world. They cover about 48 cities around the world. And my goal really is to support entrepreneurs wherever they may be. And we have only one Draper University, and it's in Hero City, San Mateo, California. But we're planning on setting these up around the world, and so that we'll grab entrepreneurs very early. We'll have an opportunity to guide them, train them, and then fund them, and then maybe these guys will fund them later on.
Okay, let's transition to the do's and don'ts of pitching. You guys get a lot of pitches, a lot of people in your inbox. There's a lot of entrepreneurs in the room. We have the semifinalists for the pitch competition coming up on this stage after us. Maybe we can start with the don'ts. So the don'ts of pitching. What would you give, what advice would you give maybe first-time early founders who are trying to pitch their startup and they may not have done it before, it may be a new thing to them? What's your advice of what not to do? We'll start with Anne.
Well, first of all, at the A round, the important thing to remember is we're not funding products, we're funding companies. And everybody loves their products. So one of the main don'ts is don't dive into the functions and features of your product and leave the meeting without me understanding what business are you in, what's your TAM or total available market, and why is this something big I should really spend time on. Second is, if I'm the right investor for you, or our firm is, we know a lot about enterprise software. We probably don't know much about your vision of the future, but you should captivate me versus educate me so that I want to be more educated by you. That again means, how do you come in and convince me you're the one to fund? I'll give one example. Years ago, I took a meeting with a company called Hyperion, a 2-person startup, ultimately became a $3 billion exit. And Jim and Bob, no one had ever heard of these guys. They weren't typical Silicon Valley guys. They came in, and the first thing they did is said, we're creating a new category called business intelligence. And they rolled out this scroll, which had 500 names on it. And they said, you can pick any of these 500 companies. We've talked to them all, and if you fund us to finish building this product and establishing this company, they're all going to buy our product. Guess what? We were captivated. We were rapt with attention.
Was it a literal scroll?
Exactly. It was very theatrical. I don't recommend.
There you go. A little
theatrics.
theatricalness is good.
But
yeah.
Anyway, the point is that they had our attention in the first 3 minutes. And that was at a time where it was easier to get our attention because we didn't have cell phones. We weren't under the table accepting messages. So you have to get our attention in the why you're there in the first 3 minutes, or you won't get it at all.
Christine?
I think, I think when we're talking about pitches, probably a lot of people are interested in the pitch, maybe if it's on stage or when they're presenting at a pitch competition. In many ways, probably the most pitching that the founders here in the room are going to do, it's probably maybe the one-on-one conversation. So just on that angle, what I would say don't do is to make it feel like this transaction where you're just one of many investors and you're like, are you in or out? There's a lot of kind of orchestration that happens when founders try to pitch and they're trying to, I don't know, they've learned it from sources online or other founders. I would say I can understand creating that element of urgency and we're closing the round next week and then that doesn't happen. But I would say try to find that balance between kind of creating that urgency, but also try to really build a relationship with the investor. So I can always tell, and I'm sure Tim and Ann have seen this many times, founders who've actually done their homework and they come to you saying, I know why we would want you as an investor, where we'd really like your help. What is it that we, why do you want our money? If it's just a check or it's because of the network, the
there's a lot of checks out there.
Exactly. And in many ways, is it kind of a founder's market or investor's market? But
what would you say it is right now? Founders or investors?
I'd probably say it's still a founder's market, especially in the Valley. In other markets, maybe not so much. Maybe founders don't have that leverage, and so we see this a lot outside of the U.S. But definitely, I think point being. I definitely notice when founders take the time to try to establish that relationship, a lot of it is in the little things and how they follow up with you, how they talk to you about their round, if they treat you like you're a check, you got to come in or you're out, versus kind of really getting to know you as an investor. I think that's something that often, when founders do that, it's noticeable.
Tim?
So I would say don't be incremental. Don't just be sort of the next improvement on Facebook. Don't think of I'm thinking more, what should the business be than how you should pitch it. Make sure that your business matters. Make sure it's very important, and make sure that when you pitch it, when you sell it, that you are showing a vision of the future that changes humanity in some way. And so that people kind of look and go, oh, wow, this is really exciting and interesting. And don't fake it. My job is to read your heart. I'm looking to see how passionate you are, how excited you are, how your future, whether this is going to be, just, hey, I got an idea, Tim, maybe we can do this, or, hey, the world's going to change. This is going to be so cool. I can tell the difference as to which one of those you are. So when you're pitching, first of all, show your heart, show your enthusiasm, show what you've built, what you've grown. And then you also need to sort of think in terms of, I am a train leaving the station. You as an investor have a chance to get on my train or not. Have that attitude, not the, hey, please give me some money. I'm desperate. It's okay to say you're desperate for money, but it's also important to say, hey, I'm desperate for money, but I know this is our future. This is where we're going. This is all the cool stuff that's going to happen because I'm going to be so successful. And if you want to be a part of it, you come on board.
I get pitched this as a journalist all the time. I'm the Uber for X. I'm the Airbnb for X. The three of you, maybe starting with Ann, would you invest in a company that says we are the Uber for X, we are the X for X? Because that's kind of getting at what Tim's getting out of a vision versus...
I'd do it if it were Uber for space travel.
Well, there you go, someone in the room.
Yeah, sometimes that really does work because it gives you a baseline of where you're going. But if it's the Uber for something tiny, we're looking for large opportunities where you've got a little bit of room to roam. Remember, at the early stages, we don't have very many facts. It's all assumptions. So we're buying into your strategic thinking that some of these assumptions might turn into facts, and we know they all won't. So if we've got a big space to roam in, so if it's in Uber space, we're probably going to be worried about it because then it's in Lyft space and many other spaces. One other thing about pitching is don't be over-rehearsed. And I know people are in a lot of pitch fests and they stand up there alone and nobody gives them feedback. But the worst thing that can happen in the meeting is one of the investors asks a question on slide 3, and you say the following: I'll get to that on slide 9. You should be so excited that we're engaging with you that you should just say, well, what is that question? Let me help you understand this or whatever. So we do see the other thing that Tim's talking about is reading your heart, is we really want to, if we're interested, we'll be involved in that. So it's not like the pitch fest at all.
When you're evaluating a deal, this is maybe an unusual question, but what do you wish that a founder would ask you? So, advice to founders who are pitching, and when you left a room, say you left a room like, man, I wish they would have said this, or I wish they would have asked me this. Does that make sense, Christine? Do you, or Tim? Do you know?
Well, I think most entrepreneurs are coming in to pitch, so they're not really coming in to ask us a lot of questions. It's kind of nice to sort of make it a conversation. So it's okay to ask.
I'm thinking less in the formal pitch, more in like the conversation. Yeah.
It's okay to have a conversation, get to know us. But don't ask me about how are your kids and doing, unless you know my kids. My kids are pretty awesome if you haven't met them. But I don't get into sort of getting into my personal life or anything. Just kind of, hey, how you doing, whatever, is fine. And then you've got a job to do, which is like pitch us. Make sure that we understand what it is you're doing. And don't try to jump too far too fast. Assume I know nothing. It's usually a good assumption, and then start from that. Start from how you would explain it to your teenage daughter or your grandmother. Start there, and I think that helps when you're pitching somebody. Just think, I got to get the basics down here first, because often venture capitalists forget to ask the obvious question, like the stupid question, and you need to give them the stupid answer to get them started on their smarter questions.
So yeah, Christine, important questions that maybe is not the initial pitch, but when you're evaluating a deal, things that founders need to know to ask through that process that maybe is not as obvious, that you wish they would ask.
Actually, what I was thinking when you asked that is oftentimes founders don't really ask questions. So some of it is also if they have, I don't know if the term is EQ, if they're really kind of aware of the other person on the person on the other side of the table, like are they listening? Because I've seen some cases where the founders are just, and this may be kind of what they feel they're expected to do, but they're pitching in a one-on-one meeting for like 20 minutes, which means they're just talking for 20 minutes straight. Sometimes I would advise stop and ask questions, kind of check in, or think of like, say, Anne, I know you invested in this company in your portfolio in the similar space as us. Have they sent, something that's a little bit more engaging than just kind of prattling on for 20 minutes straight, and then maybe the person has checked out, especially if it's over the phone, that's even higher risk of doing that. So I think actually in terms of like what questions to ask, there's kind of the typical questions on, about the investor, but I feel like if you're talking about your business and why the why question, like why you should care, I actually have found that a lot of founders don't even ask those questions. They just kind of just jump right into the pitch and they talk for however long. Sometimes it's longer than 20 minutes and there isn't much engagement. So I would say if you want to keep the investor engaged, you should be making it a bit more interactive. So even just asking questions about, not so much about like where do you invest, your pitch size, you can find that out, but more if you are really in a dialogue and getting them excited about your customer or your vision and your business, then that's a good sign.
And last word with you, engaging the investor.
Yeah, I think one of the things, if you're fortunate enough to get a full partners meeting, that's a very big deal for an entrepreneur. Remember, there's only 5,000 companies worldwide last year that got their first round of venture capital. So for you, the best thing to do is to call up other companies in our portfolio before you go in and give that pitch and say, what is that full partners meeting like? Are they interactive? Do they just sit there quietly? You know, how would you recommend I handle this, and what can I expect? Because you only get one shot at that full partners meeting, and it's sort of a do or die meeting. The important thing for you to ask when you leave that meeting is, what is your process? Are you going to contemplate this for a week, and after you've seen a bunch more companies? How does due diligence work? When will you get back to us? Those are questions that you should ask, because you've had a really, really important meeting. But you should be prepared for it, not by just asking us, although the partner that brings you in typically does do some prep because they want to fund you. So if you go into a full partners meeting, you have at least one advocate, but lots of things in that meeting.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you all, and thank you all for watching.
Good job.
Job.